Hello, this is Mr. Willis, and I'm going to show you some of the tools in Google Drawings. There's actually a lot more that this little tool can do than most people think. The first thing I'm going to do is create some text, because in my example I'm making a book cover and my book needs a title. To add new text, I can either click on Insert and Text Box, or I can just find the text box here up at the top. Both buttons do the same thing. When I click that button, in order to get a text box, I also have to draw it. You'll see how my mouse is turned into a cross, and so now I can draw a text box across the top of my book cover. And as soon as I've done that, pay attention to a couple of things here. A bunch of new tools just appeared up top here. These are all of my text tools. I can use these to change my letters and colors and different things in my text box. Before I go too much farther though, let's go ahead and put some text in here that we can work with. The title of my book is something called Interworld, so I'm going to go ahead and type that in there. And just for a moment, watch what happens if I click down here. All those text tools have disappeared. So make sure, if you can't see all of those tools, click on your letters, and then they'll be right back up top there. Now, since I've already written this word here, in order to change it, I first need to highlight it. Now that it's highlighted, I can do a number of different things. I'm not going to go through every item on this list, but feel free to try them out. A couple things I will do is, first, I think I'll change the font. Remember, this has to do with the style of your letters. There's quite a few fonts you can already see here. If you don't like any of these, click on More Fonts at the bottom, and that will let you add more fonts from Google. And there's an almost limitless number when you go online and look at all the fonts they have. But this one will work fine for right now. Next, I think I'm going to change the size, because these letters are way too small to be the title for this entire book cover. So let's jump these all the way up to 60. Of course, notice a bigger number here equals bigger letters here. And you know what? We can go even bigger than that. Let's do 96. Yeah, that fills the whole thing up. I can also, in this case, I don't think I'm going to necessarily bold or italic any of these, but I am going to change the color. Now, there's two things here when you change the color. I can change the color of the text. In this case, maybe I'll do a dark blue. I can also change, let's highlight these again, the highlight color. So this would be the color that appears behind my text. Maybe I want to have yellow behind the text. So we've got some that really stands out there. I don't know if I necessarily like that yellow, but I can always go back and change it at any time. That's the basics for adding text. Now, any other text that I want to add, I'll have to either click in this text box and then hit enter to get a new row of words, or I'll just want to maybe make a whole new text box. Let's say I wanted to write something down here at the bottom. Moving on, the next major tool that you're going to use in Google Drawings is, of course, drawings. There's a couple different ways to draw here. One way to draw is you can start with lines. This is set just to make a straight line, so I could make a line and make a couple different lines and build something out of them. You'll notice as soon as I draw a line, I get some tools up here, such as changing the color of the line, or changing the style, make it a dash or something different like that. Oops, I made an extra line. I'm going to get rid of that one. Along with the line tool, if I click the arrow next to the line tool, there's several different kinds. Instead of just the straight lines, I could make an arrow if I'm wanting to point specifically at something. And notice I can, of course, change the arrow that appears at the end, and even resize it or do different things if I want to. If I don't necessarily want an arrow, there's also some curved lines. One that you might find useful is this bottom one called Scribble. That essentially turns my mouse into a pen, so now I can draw basically whatever I want. And so there I kind of have a scribble. Now, one interesting thing, once you've created any of these objects, if you don't want to necessarily create any new ones, but you just want to move around what you've created, you can click on the pointer tool. This is also called the select tool. So this lets me grab anything that I've created and move it about, or I can even grab the corners of it and maybe resize it a little bit. I can also use this to select something I've created, and in the case of this scribble, which just looks kind of ugly, push my backspace key and delete it. I'm going to go ahead and delete these lines too. I don't think I necessarily need them for what I'm doing. Along with those, I can also add shapes, and so you'll see there's a number of different shapes here, whether it be just from something as basic as a rectangle down to speech bubbles or call out boxes, or there's a lot of different shapes here. In order to add a shape, I just choose the shape that I want, maybe a rectangle here, draw that rectangle onto my drawing, and then you'll see, as with anything else, once an object appears and I have selected it, all these new tools come up. So I can change the fill color, I can change the color of the line on the outside. You'll notice so now it's kind of got a purple line on the outside. I can change how thick that line is on the outside. If I want a really thick line, I could add a much thicker line. And any shape also has the ability for you to add on things like text. So if I were to double click inside of this shape, now I have a little flashing cursor, so I can add more text. And of course, since this is text here, I've got all of those different tools of making the text bigger, changing the color, and everything you have with your normal text tool. Now in this case, I don't know that I'm necessarily going to use a rectangle either for my book cover, so I'm going to go ahead and erase that. Moving on, the next item that we're probably going to be adding in our Google Drawing might be an actual image. Google Drawing actually has a built-in image search that works with Google Images. So to insert an image, I can either find the box that kind of looks like a little picture with mountains in it, or I can click on Insert Image. You'll see that same little picture right here. And what this is going to do is pop up my Insert Image box. Now the first time this loads, it might be on something like Google Drive or one of these other ones like maybe Upload. What we want to look for is search. Once you're on the search section of this actually takes us directly to a Google search. So I can look for whatever it is that I want to add. And I actually want to add a picture of the Earth for this particular book title. So I'm going to type in the word Earth and hit my search button. And that gives me a whole bunch of pictures of the Earth. And I can choose the one that I want. Now, I'm going to start with this picture. I just click on it and click the blue button to add it. And there we go. It's now inside my book cover. But let me show you a slightly more advanced trick here with adding images. Let's say I want the Earth, but I'd like to find an Earth that doesn't necessarily have all of this color on the background, because I'd kind of like just the picture here, but then beyond that I want it to blend in with my book cover. So here's what I can do. I'm going to go ahead and delete this Earth for now. I'm going to go back to my image search, and this time I'm going to type Earth, and then I'm going to type the word transparent and search for that. Now you'll notice that the Earths that it's showing at this point don't necessarily have a background to them. So let me go ahead and choose this one and select it. And the Earth that puts in there, you'll see has no background. It's just kind of that little checkerboard in the background, which basically just means blank space. And so now I've got an Earth that's in here all by itself, and I can blend it in with whatever background or different things that I'm going to use. Now once you have an image in here, there's a few different things you can do. And so I'm going to talk for a moment about how to mess with an image once you have added it. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'd like to have one Earth that looks like this, but then I want another Earth that just looks a little different. So I'm going to copy this one. I just use Control-C to copy, and then I'll click over here in an empty spot, Control-V to paste, and you'll see now I have two Earths. To make them kind of stand apart, what I'm going to go do is click on this Earth, and then click on Image Options. And there's a few different things it can do here. So I can recolor it. I'm going to go ahead and choose kind of a greenish recolor. And so now I have an Earth here, a regular one, but I also have one that looks kind of green. Another thing I could do if I wanted to is I could change the transparency. And so you see how that makes it look kind of see-through, or I can change the brightness and the contrast, which just kind of changes how bright the picture appears or how intense the colors are in the image is what the contrast does. But for this one, I think I'll just leave those alone, and I'm actually going to just put transparency back to normal for that one. And just for my particular one, because I'm happy to do a book cover about a story that takes place on multiple worlds, I'm going to go ahead and copy my Earth one more time. And this time I think I'll recolor this Earth to have more of a red tint to it. So now I've got all these different Earths. And that's a little bit about how to just change up the images you have and copy and paste some of the images you've put in there. The next thing I want to show you is how to add more of a background to your book cover. So in my book, it's all about a guy who travels from one Earth to another Earth, this whole multiple universe thing. And so what I think would look kind of cool is kind of a space, outer space, starry background. So I'm just going to find me an image, and I'll just type in outer space. And this is going to show me some outer space images. I kind of like this one, and so I'm going to add that one. And you'll notice there's a big problem here as soon as this image appears. It's definitely not a background. It's right on top of all my other stuff. So here's a little trick I can do. First, I'm going to go ahead and move this image up to the top and resize it so it covers up my whole picture. In this case, it's kind of running off the edge of the page. That's not a big deal right now. We'll fix that later. But as I mentioned before, it's not really a background. It's covering up all the other work I've done. So how can I fix this? All I need to do is right-click on the image and then go to Order. And you'll see this brings up a few different options here. The one that I'm going to choose is Send to Back. That puts my starry picture on the very back. All that other stuff that I made is now in front of it. I can also move things one little bit at a time. Let's say I want this blue Earth to move forward in the order, not all the way to the front, but maybe just move it one in front of the others. Or maybe I want to send this red one backwards in the order, maybe 2 times. So I'll do order backward, or or send backward twice. And so we've just kind of reversed my Earths there, right? But I still have these multiple Earths, and they're still in front of the starry background. So now this is kind of starting to look like a pretty cool book cover. All right, moving on. One of the final things I want to make sure you see is cropping images. Sometimes images, in order to resize them, we have to make them bigger than the page, or we might just want to cut off a certain part of an image. And so here's how we can do that. In this case, I want to crop my starry background because it's running off the page and it's hard for me to see where the edge of my page is since it is, extending a little too far. So first, of course, I click on the image to make sure I have it selected. And then my crop tool is this little black icon up here that kind of looks like a couple triangles crisscrossing with each other. And so I'll click crop, and it brings up my crop boxes. These are these little black rectangles and corners appearing on the picture. I can grab one of these corners and bring it in, and you'll notice there when I bring it in quite a bit, I can now kind of see where the edge of my page is. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this and bring it back a little bit so it's matching right up with the edge of my page. And once I think I have it cropped correctly, I just push the crop button one more time, and there it's cropped. And so now I have my book cover, and I've got a cool title, I've got some pictures on it, I have a nice little background to it, and if there's other features you want to add, feel free to add them and see what you can do.